Welcome to OLC 4.0. This is term 2B. We are in class 23, looking at assignment 33 today and also contractions. Today is Thursday, May 23rd, 2024, and I am Jillian Percy. Here is all our contact info. Right now and until the end of term 2B, please send your work to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. If you're doing this course over the summer, remember to also include me in the student work, jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. If you have a question about an assignment, you can also message me there or call the studio 1-800-465-7144 or call the office during office hours 1-800-667-3703, extension 2211. Whenever you send in work, please include your full name, the course name, the assignment number, and name. If an assignment asks for both a rough and a good draft, please label which is which and include them both in the same email. Okay, today's work. Today we're going to understand the concept of contractions and recognize common contractions, understand the concept of an audience and identify the audience for a piece of writing, identify how people change various aspects of their communication to suit their audience, understand the concept of a larger subject and a smaller topic, and generate ideas for topics, and understand the main purpose behind any piece of writing, as well as the purpose behind specific pieces of writing. And then we will also, of course, make Google happy by signing in over and over and over again. Here you go, Google. I don't know. Some programs are just not doing their job. Sorry, guys. I always feel like I should have a little sound intro going here going dee doo dee doo dee doo dee doo. Okay. Okay, we're talking about contractions. We were talking last week about using apostrophes. Actually, that was yesterday, I think. Using apostrophes to show possession with nouns, right? Like Ben's car, Joe's house. We also use apostrophes to show that a letter is missing when we're trying to make contractions. Contractions are just when you push two words together to create one word. We do it a lot when we're talking. We don't always show it in writing, but there's a few that have become so common that we do show them in writing. We usually end up dropping a sound to make that work. And then we put the apostrophe in the place of the missing letter. So somebody who's reading it knows what's missing and understands what you're trying to say. So for example, I have, when you talk quickly, ends up becoming more like I've. Okay, and we put the apostrophe there to show that the H and the A are missing. We use a lot of contractions in English, and here we're going to go over some of our most common contractions. Sometimes when we don't use contractions in our writing or speech, it can make our words sound a little bit stiff or a little bit formal. So some common contractions. I plus am equals I'm, like I'm going to the store. It plus is becomes it's, like it's windy today. He plus is becomes he's my brother. She plus is becomes she's swimming tonight. Who plus is becomes who's hungry. I plus have, we talked about it, it's I've, like I've been running. You plus have is you've been sick. You plus are is you're on the team. We plus are is we're. This is one of the hardest ones because it looks a lot like a couple other words. We're done our work. Looks a lot like were and a little bit like where. They plus are is they're coming home. And then we talk about the future tense. I plus will is I'll be flying soon. He plus will is he'll be happy to see you. She plus will is she'll be ready soon. You plus will is you'll need a calculator. We plus will is we'll go to the park later. That's another one that's confusing because without the apostrophe, it just looks like the word well. They plus will, they'll be ready at 5 o'clock. It plus will, it'll be home soon. That one's kind of a funky one. It does get used, but not very often. Okay. Now, sometimes it's easy to confuse some common contractions because there are two sets of words that actually both get shortened into the same contraction. So I would and I had, for both of those, we drop all the letters but the D. So they both get shortened into I'd. So you have to look at the context of the sentence to know whether it's a contraction for had, like I've done something in the past, or would, like you might do something in the future, right? So you have to kind of think about the context of the words. So then we've got he would or he had, both which get shortened to he'd. She would or she had becomes she'd. They would or they had, they'd. You would or you had, you'd. We would or we had, we'd. It would or it had, it'd. I don't know that anyone ever uses that. It's a weird one. I think we use it more in speech than we use it in writing. Um, Remember that anything with the word would is conditional and usually based in the future. I would like to go to the park tomorrow if I have time. I'd like to go to the park tomorrow if I have time. And contractions with had are based in the past. I had driven there yesterday. I'd driven there yesterday. So when you see the original, you can tell, but sometimes when you're reading, it can be tricky to know which is which. Now, a lot of common contractions are made with the word not, and not just indicates the opposite of whatever word it's linked to. So if I said, I cannot eat, um, I'm doing the opposite of I cannot, but I can eat. Nope, I cannot eat. Do plus not equals don't. Can plus not equals can't. Will plus not equals won't. Have plus not equals haven't. Did plus not equals didn't. Was plus not equals wasn't. And were plus not equals weren't. Most of those are pretty normal or typical of what you'd expect. The two ones that are kind of confusing are do and not. It sounds like it should become don't, but we don't say that in English. Don't. And then will and not become won't. And again, I think it's just because it's kind of hard to say wilt. We wilt do that. You end up wanting to drop one of those letters. And what they did was they ended up dropping those L's, right? And then here we have had not, hadn't, would not, wouldn't, could not, couldn't, should not, shouldn't, has not, hasn't, is not, isn't, are not, and aren't. Okay. Now, these types of contractions are sometimes used at the beginning of a sentence, these negative contractions. And in this usage, the question sort of implies that the answer is assumed that it's negative, but it's not a certainty, right? If I say, like, didn't you do the dishes yet? It's like, I don't think you've done them. And you'd be like, yeah, I didn't do them because I wasn't finished my homework, or I did so do them. I just put them away so quick you didn't see, or whatever, right? There's kind of a negative assumption in there. Isn't he done his homework? Aren't you coming with us? Weren't you scared? Can't you find your keys? And then contraction confusion. Oh, okay. When we are speaking, we don't always pronounce everything perfectly. Nobody does, right? And a lot of times when we then go to write it, we write what we're hearing, not what the word is actually supposed to be. So there are some contractions that are like 3-word contractions, like he would have becomes would have, and we've dropped the HA, but it sounds like of, like OF, he would of. But that doesn't make any sense because of doesn't really belong there. Would is a helper verb. It has to have another verb after it. And of isn't a verb, so it doesn't make any sense there. He would have gone if he'd known. She could have, right? Could have, not she could of. It sounds like of, but it's not. It should have It should have, not it should of. As far as I know, there's no contraction that uses of. I might be proved wrong, but I can't think of one right at the moment. Oh, this is meant to be an interactive exercise, but clearly they've forgot to pull them off. Sorry. I somehow didn't notice this. I'm going to yank them off anyways and mix them up, and we'll have to kind of figure them out. This is called a close exercise in case you're not sure. And it's where you try and practice taking one word out and figuring out the meaning of the sentence and putting one word back in. Mom said we something go on our own. We don't go on our own, haven't gone on our own, aren't, didn't, wasn't, and won't. So you have to look at two things here. When you're looking at this, one thing you have to look at is when we're talking about the person, what makes sense in terms of singular or plural? And is it present, past, future, or conditional? Conditional will be things like would have, could have, that kind of stuff. So you got to kind of look at both those aspects when you're doing this. So we is a plural, right? So let me think. I'm not sure if don't will work there. We don't go on our own. I don't think so. Can't would work. Don't hasn't got the right connotation. We do not go on our own. That would be like should not, but because obviously you could, right? Betty said that something go with us tonight. That Betty said that she won't go with us tonight. Maybe that works. Okay. Spinach is slimy, so I blank want any for dinner. I do not. I do not want any for dinner. I am feeling sick, so I blank be going to work. So I can't use aren't because aren't is for plural. I haven't, wasn't, didn't. I would say won't again when I use it down here again. So I won't be going to work. I am trying to lose weight, so I something eat the cake. So I won't eat the cake. They want to use won't a lot here. I thought John would be there, but he wasn't there. I don't like that teacher, so I haven't been going to her class. Something you gonna eat any dinner? Aren't. Aren't you gonna eat any dinner? And I couldn't use the word didn't there because didn't is in the past and it doesn't work with going, which is kind of a continuous present sort of thing. Why blank? Oh, something got lost there. You know what? That one, I think I was supposed to not have the word didn't there, but I forgot and put it there. Why didn't you go to the store and get any milk? Okay. All right. So we're going to be talking about different types of writing today, mainly because it comes up in one of the questions. And I kind of want to talk about it before we get to the question, just so we don't get all mixed up with the question, okay? So we've studied how to write different types of writing, but we haven't really done it the opposite way around, where you look at a piece of writing and try and decide what format it is in. Sometimes they shorten format to form, right? Some formats are a little easier to recognize than others. For example, a lot of people find poetry very easy to recognize because it's so different from other types of writing. So here's an example. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. How can I tell that that's a poem? Well, one way there's a little bit of rhyme between soul and all. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. There's the funny thing with punctuation, right? Where everything's capitalized at the front and it doesn't necessarily need to end in a period or a comma. And it's kind of talking about like an image of something without really just telling you straightforward what it is. It's a little more, if I say poetic, that's a little bit redundant, right? It's trying to paint a picture rather than tell you a story. And that's kind of a poetry sort of thing to do. Okay, if I look at this type of writing, what is it? It's very, even if it didn't say letter there, you'd know it was a letter, right? You can see the format. There's who sent it, there's who it's going to, here's their greeting, here's all your stuff for the writing, and here's your closing, right? Just the physical way it's set up, you can tell it's a letter even before you just read it, right? Physically on the page. Okay, what kind of writing is this and how do we know? Talks about eat fresh, buy local, indie farmers markets, seasonal items, new farmers. To me, this seems like an ad. There's a pretty girl selling produce, and it's telling you the address, how to get there, how to call. They're trying to persuade you to buy their vegetables, basically. Okay, over here, what kind of writing is this? All right, it says Metairie Bank Fraud Protection Online Safety Tips. This, oh, and up top it says banknotes volume, what is it, 17? Issue 3, August 2023. This looks like a newsletter. I was gonna say like a public service brochure, but then when I saw the stuff up top, I think it's probably like a little newsletter they put out once a month that just kind of like tries to give their customers information. So it is kind of a little bit of a public relations campaign, but it's also meant to be sort of informative, right? This is it says what on it? A mission statement. A mission statement is when a business writes, here's what we're all about, and here are the qualities we will try to have as we do business with you. And it's kind of a trendy thing that started a while back. Before that, it was kind of a given that everybody's in there to make money, which is still the case, obviously. But it became an awareness that having a model of we're going to be good citizens or we're going to be honest or whatever kind of improved a lot of customer business relationships. So a mission statement became a big thing, and a lot of businesses will have them. Now they don't always use them correctly, but they do usually have them. Okay, so here is the original assignment. Okay, this is not, I am revising this. If you're doing this during the summer and you've already been given the original, go ahead and carry it out. If it is after September, do not do this particular assignment. Wait and do the assignment that I tell you about near the end. Okay, they're very similar. I just changed a few things that seemed to be confusing people because I don't want to have questions. If every single person who answers something is mixed up by it, then to me, that means that question isn't written very well. So I wanted to change it. So here it says, read the following passage and try to figure out what it is saying, and then answer the questions that follow. Wassa Distance Education Center is cognizant of the strengths, values, and traditions passed down through the generations of First Nations people. We have honored those who have walked ahead of us, have respect for those who walk with us, and consider those yet to come. Wassa Distance Education Center encompasses the traditional education process by blending culture, tradition, information, and technology. This philosophy provides opportunities to demonstrate our commitment to the values, needs, and learning styles of our communities. Our goal is to continue developing and implementing an education system that always takes into account the next generation. We will meet the needs of the present without compromising future generations and educate the people we serve so they will succeed in the modern world. Okay, here are the questions that came with that original assignment. What is the form of this piece of writing? Number 2, what is the style of this piece of writing, formal or informal, and explain why? What is the tone of this piece of writing, serious or casual, and explain why? When the writer wrote this, what do you think his purpose was? Explain. 5, who do you think the intended audience is for this piece of writing? Do you think the form, style, and tone of this writing are appropriate to the audience you identified in question 5? Explain your answer. Number 7, there are several words in this writing that may not be familiar to you, either because they're spelled incorrectly, used in a way you've not seen before, or simply words that are not in your vocabulary. Choose 5 words that seem unusual or strange and try to find their meanings. Use any and every resource you can think of, including the context of what you've read, to try and discover the meaning of these unfamiliar words, and that part is worth 3 marks. What is the form? Hint, many businesses and organizations use this form of writing. So some examples of business formats are things like advertising, persuasive, mission statements, informative letters, memos. Of the examples we looked at, what type of writing did it seem like it most closely matched? Also, obviously, put it in a complete sentence. Don't just put the one line answer. What is the style of this piece of writing, formal or informal, and why? Okay, first of all, this word has many different meanings to different people. And it really bothers me that the author of this particular unit didn't give a definition to make sure all the readers were on the same page with how they meant it. To me, when I hear the word style, it's often defined as the combination of all the decisions a writer makes about the tone, voice, sentence structure, paragraphing. However, that's not what they seem to mean. They seem to be meaning, is the writing formal or informal? Which I'm not really sure is the only thing that style is about. So I don't like that question. But answering the question in the way that they have written it, formal style is often used between colleagues or relating to customers in business, newspapers, professional, and academic settings. It will use proper sentence structure and paragraphing. It often uses deliberately high vocabulary. Think of like a snooty teacher talking. So here's an example on using fashion. If all the world's a stage, Fashion Month has long been the costume cupboard, a trove of froth and tulle, sparkle and glitter, designed to catch the eye and hold it up. A dressing up box that, although delightful and entertaining to lose yourself in, doesn't always hold up in reality. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. We could all use some fabulous escapism from time to time. But ultimately, when we venture out from the sanctity of your wardrobe, you need to be able to live in these creations, at least in the physical realm. We'll get into the virtual later. For spring summer 2024, I have to applaud designers for creating collections that, yes, hold beauty, but also have a place in the everyday. So it's very formal, very upscale kind of language. Okay. Informal style is often used in text messages, cards, notes, between friends or family or anyone wanting to seem down to earth. It may use incorrect sentence structure, expressly incomplete thoughts. It may use slang and abbreviations. It kind of sounds like your favorite cousin talking to you or your best friend. So here's an example of informal writing. The new grandpa chic is so funny. Who would wear that? LOL. The ultra girly Barbie look is not me either. The preppy look is too old school. I don't work in no office. My outfits need to be a little more cash, but I ain't wearing my grandpa's clothes yet. Fashion trends for spring this year? Whatever's in my closet. Okay. Number 3, what is the tone of this piece? Serious or casual, and why? Again, it's another one. I don't like how they phrase this, but let's talk about tone. Learning to adjust your writing and your speaking skills for different audiences and purposes is a very important element of literacy. After all, you need to be able to communicate with all the different types of people that make the world go round, not just me. So for this reason, you're going to take a close look at form, style, tone, and language level, and see how it relates to the purpose of communication. We talked about this yesterday, I believe, whether it's to ask to speak to a friend on the phone or respond to a personal question, as well as your intended audience. Tone. Aside from individual word choice, the overall tone or attitude of a piece of writing should be appropriate to the audience and the purpose. The tone may be objective or subjective, which means objective is like it's trying to describe things without allowing emotions in. Subjective is more emotional. Although here they say logical and emotional, which is really kind of the same thing. Intimate or distant, humorous or serious. It can consist mostly of long, intricate sentences, short, simple ones, or something in between. Good writers frequently vary the length of their sentences. One way to achieve proper tone is to imagine a situation in, in which to say the words being written. A journal might be like a conversation with a close friend, where there's the freedom to use slang or other casual forms of speech. A column for a newspaper may be more like a high school graduation speech. It can be more formal, but it can still be funny or familiar. An academic paper is like a formal speech at a conference. Being interesting is desirable, but there's no room for personal digressions or familiar usage of slang words. In all of these cases, there is some freedom of self-expression while adapting to the audience. In the same way, writing should change to suit the occasion. Um, I'm I'm not going to go there because I know that confused some people. Why is tone important in a story? Tone helps engage with your target audience and helps to create a certain feeling and emotion in the reader. In business writing, a more formal tone can help you present an organized, confident attitude. In storytelling, a casual or playful tone can help you bring your reader closer to the characters. Because the reader can't see the writer's facial expression or body language when they're conveying an idea, the author's word choice and writing style is essential. We use tone in writing communication all the time. The right tone conveys the author's attitude in a clear, approachable way. You can also choose a certain tone that might help underline your story's theme. For example, a tragedy might favor a melancholy and introspective tone, while a romantic comedy might favor a cheerful and humorous tone. Be mindful choosing the right tone for your story, and you can gently encourage the reader to feel and experience the story in a certain way. The type of relationship you want to have with your reader and the type of relationship your characters have with each other will inform the different tones you use throughout your narrative. Here are some of the most common tone words you'll see across literature. Cheerful. I can't wait to go to the party. Pessimistic. This party is going to be a disaster. Hopeful. This party could change everything for me. Optimistic. We're going to have a great time and absolutely nothing will go wrong. Melancholy. I remember the parties of my younger days. Things were simpler then. Arrogant. Oh, I hope they realize how lucky they are to have me on their guest list. Reverential. Oh, goodness, being included tonight is an incredible honor. Fearful. But what if I make a fool of myself and nobody likes me? Humorous. It's not a party, it's a poolside bacchanalia. Impersonal. It's just something to do, I guess. Desperate. I need to make this party count. Persuasive. Don't worry, a fun night out is exactly what you need. Inspirational. Sometimes all it takes is one magical night to turn your life around. All right, that's from Scribophile. Okay, and I am also going to uh, get rid of that. Mm, okay, maybe I will. They don't directly talk about voice, but depending on what kind of writing program you used in high school, they may have talked about voice quite a bit in high school. Voice expresses who you are as a person, and some types of writing celebrate and encourage personal voice, like novel writing, speech writing, songwriting, but others really discourage it. They want everything to seem objective, informal, kind of like Spock talking, things like business memos. So two different writers could be writing a letter to a friend in an informal, casual manner about a summer event. So their tone may be the same. One writer really focuses on the people and the atmosphere using lots of adjectives and long, winding sentences that emphasize the beauty and creativity at the event. The other writes shorter sentences with lots of humorous metaphors and similes that make the reader smile. Those are often our expressions of the writer's voice. If you can literally picture the person who would be saying those things, that writer has done a good job of showing you their voice. Voice and tone are pretty similar, but not example. So I'm not going to worry. Yeah, I don't like that. Okay, I do like this one. Yeah, I think we'll cap this is one where he talks really clearly about
I can never
tone.
remember how to
I thought
perfectly
he did a
format
great
my
job of it.
citations.
Hang on a
Just click
second.
Get Citation, and you'll have a full citation ready to
There's
copy.
more than one way to do this.
All-
One way works really well. The other way doesn't work quite so well. Why is there no noise? Hang on a second. Just check my computer. No.
You've probably heard someone excuse away a
That's not good. He's talking to me, yet nothing's coming out. All right. I really struggled with how to explain tone. I thought it was kind of a hard concept to get across. And I thought that he did a really good job. Hang on a sec. Yeah. No. Sorry, hang on a sec, guys. I'm trying to see if this will work. Oh, it still wants to pull up the same thing. Okay. Well, if you get a chance to take a look at it later, it talks about we grow people and it talks about creating a purposeful tone in your writing. It's a really helpful little article. I don't know why. Yeah, it looks like I've got everything on, but it doesn't want to play, so I apologize. Okay. When the writer wrote the business piece of writing, what was their purpose and explain? Remember that there's only three main purposes: to inform, to persuade, and to entertain. Pick one of those types and give an example from the writing that supports your choice of purpose. Okay. Number 5, who do you think is the intended audience for this piece of writing? Who would be interested in it? Is there a specific age, gender, income level, education level, or lifestyle that would be most interested in this writing? And then number 6, do you think the form, style, and tone of this writing are appropriate to the audience you identified in question 5? Explain your answer. So please don't just tell me yes, it's appropriate. How is the form appropriate? How is the style appropriate? How is the tone appropriate? Give me some examples from the text. So here's an example. This is called Total Solar Eclipse by Allison Shaw. And it says, hey, who turned out the lights? Sometimes the answer is the moon. About every 18 months, somewhere on Earth experiences a total solar eclipse when the moon completely blocks the sun. But for you, it's probably a special event. Total solar eclipses only occur in the same location about once every 375 years. During a total solar eclipse, the sky appears dark, the temperature drops, and some animals even change their behavior. Perhaps thinking it's nighttime, some cows will return to their barns, crickets chirp, and nocturnal bats will take flight. But be careful. Direct light from the sun can burn the cells in your eyes, causing blindness. The sun is only completely blocked by the moon for a few moments during a total solar eclipse. So to safely experience the solar show, use special purpose eclipse glasses or a solar viewer to block the harmful rays. Okay, so this was in a magazine article. It's geared towards children as their audience, and its style seems very informal or casual, which seems pretty appropriate when writing to children who might not enjoy or even understand a more formal style. Its tone is casual or even humorous, which I think is an effective way to capture children's attention. The form is a magazine article. It's very short. It could be illustrated with all sorts of interesting photographs, which would make it very easy for children to read and understand. So yes, I think they've chosen an effective form and tone and style for their intended audience. Oh, last one that's from the original, and then we'll switch over to the, I think we switch over to the new one. There are several words in this writing that may not be familiar to you, either because they're spelled incorrectly, used in a way you've not seen before, or are simply words that are not in your vocabulary. Choose 5 words that seem unusual or strange and try to find their meanings. Use any and every resource you can think of, including the context of what you've read, to discover the meaning of these unfamiliar words. Obvious resources might include a dictionary or a thesaurus. Obviously, pick up the word, look at the definition, tell me what it is. If you copy directly from the dictionary, that's fine. But at the bottom, just tell me what dictionary you used, right? The way dictionaries phrase things is not the same way that we phrase things in normal sentences. Now, sometimes you may just know what the word means and you just wrote it down, or you made a random guess based on the context and you just wrote it down, in which case that's fine. It's deliberately phrased in an open-ended way that gives you the freedom of choice. Okay. I definitely have some problems with how they wrote that assignment. So here is my rewritten version. Okay. It's worth a little bit more and it's a little bit different. Okay. Let's see here. Oh. Okay. So this is, well, I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's a piece of writing and I'm going to read it and then we'll answer some questions about it. Chris Selly, decriminalizing is besides the point. When people can use drugs openly in public with neither enforcement nor aid forthcoming, the law is pretty much mute. If anyone doubted that the conversation around harm reduction for opioid addictions has changed dramatically, it came loud and clear from Ottawa last week. The federal government denied Toronto's request to decriminalize possession of small amounts of hard drugs for personal use, and nobody much complained. Associate Minister of Health, Yara Sachs, who handles the mental health and addictions file, didn't really bother getting specific about why. She didn't need to. The D word having come to con out all the opioid-related urban misery we see most famously in Vancouver's downtown east side. Sachs has determined that Toronto's proposal does not adequately protect public health and maintain public safety, her office explained in a statement. This includes concerns with feasibility and ability for law enforcement to implement the proposed model, protection of youth, and lack of support from key players, including the province of Ontario. Some harm reduction proponents expressed disappointment, but none suggested the sky would fall, or at least not any harder or farther than it's already fallen. The latest federal data recorded 5,975 opioid overdose deaths nationwide from January to September last year, up 8% from the previous year. It's not one of those situations where the Liberals get away with something for which the Conservatives would be pilloried either. The Progressive Conservative government at Queen's Park strongly advised the city last week not to pursue decriminalization, hence the lack of support from the province that Sachs mentioned. And that wasn't even really a big deal either. Not so long ago, I feel like Premier Doug Ford would have been called a murderer. The recent disastrous example of British Columbia and other jurisdictions that have attempted this experiment are the latest examples that show decriminalization does not work. Ontario Health Minister Sylvia Jones and Solicitor General Michael Kersner wrote to Dr. Eileen Davila, Toronto's Chief Medical Officer of Health. Instead, it encourages dangerous behavior in public spaces, victimizes innocent people, and undermines law enforcement's ability to protect our communities. I could spend a whole column pulling that apart, but I'll just note again that every mainstream politician I'm aware of, including Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, agrees addicts should be treated first and foremost as patients, not criminals. I'll note again that BC is the only Canadian jurisdiction to have decriminalized hard drugs, and yet Ontario suffered just as many opioid overdose deaths per capita in the first 9 months of last year as BC, with Alberta nipping at their heels. I'll note again that decriminalization only has to mean it's okay to shoot up in a playground if we allow maniac judges the last word. As frustrating as the logic is, though, we do seem to be coalescing around a useful common understanding that decriminalization isn't the be all or end all of anything. No less than Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow, caricatured by her opponents as the gleeful harbinger of urban chaos, said as much recently. No doubt anticipating the city's application was dead in the water, but also making good sense. Without adequate housing and treatment options, Chow told the Globe and Mail, it's just a battle over a word. And that's dead right. You can have supervised injection sites without decriminalization, as Toronto and many other cities do. You can have safer supply opioid programs without decriminalization. No one is suggesting sending the cops out to round up the addicts in the street. Indeed, when you look at the states of parts of this city, which is Toronto, by the way, on your average evening, the question of whether or not to decriminalize possession of hard drugs seems ludicrously mute. A block west on Victoria Street, outside and across the street from one of Toronto's supervised injection sites, which closes at 10 p.m. Monday to Saturday and 5 p.m. on Sunday, a small community of obviously desperate people congregates with their meager worldly goods. As I left the Imperial, I witnessed two security guards shoo them out of an alcove where they didn't seem to be doing any harm except to themselves, and on to Dundas Street itself. Belongings were flung onto the sidewalk. People were staggering, limping, moving their wheelchairs along by foot. It was stomach turning. So, what do we call this situation? Criminalization sure doesn't cut it. You would need police to pay attention first. Decriminalization doesn't work either, since that kind of implies a deliberate strategic choice. I would go with something like humanitarian disaster, because I would hope we could all agree on that. It's natural people disagree on how best to tackle the issue. But the risk of dwelling on disagreement is that we simply cannot become inured to this disaster as a reality of urban life, and not just in big cities like Toronto or Vancouver. We mustn't let that happen. Okay, so here are the questions, very similar to the other ones, but on this piece of writing. And remember, you need to answer in a complete sentence. What is the form of this piece of writing? Remember, form is like format. What are some clues or reasons you believe it is that form? Some possible forms include journals, personal recounts, opinions, news articles, procedural writing, poems, songs, short stories, or letters. So what kind of form, and what are some of the elements of the writing that make you think that that's the form? When the writer wrote this, what do you think his purpose was? Explain, right? So when the writer wrote this, is it, yep, explain why you think this, okay? What do you think is the tone, right? Tone is giving off like the attitude or the emotion of this piece of writing, and explain what words, what details, what examples make you think the tone is whatever you say the tone is. And then number 4, who do you think is the intended audience for this piece of writing? We talked about audience a lot yesterday. Explain why you think that. In other words, who would be interested in reading this writing, and who is he trying to talk to? Number 5, what is the main message that the author is trying to get across to his readers? Try to summarize it in 2 to 3 detailed sentences, 6 marks. I've said the word detailed. We've talked before about this, the difference between a short sentence and a detailed sentence that is longer and gets across more information, okay? So at this point in the course, I'm expecting longer, more detailed sentences. What message has he got? And then number 6 is basically just talking about vocabulary again. There are several words in this writing that may not be familiar to you. I don't like their thing about corrected, but anyways, pick 6 words that seem unusual or strange and give me their meaning, and then use the word in a sentence of your own. And that, by the way, is 6 marks, not 5 marks. As you can see, many of the questions were quite similar. The main differences between the 2 assignments are, 1, it's a different piece of writing to read, it's longer and has a different format. There's a new question asking you to summarize the overall message. I got rid of the question about style, and there's a question about effectiveness that I think is a bit tricky, and I've just kind of left it off too. It seemed like the way they were using the word style is very similar to tones. I just kind of left it off because I thought it was repetitious. I also had you define one more word just because this is a longer piece of writing. I think there's a few more harder words, and it gives me one more mark. So it's an even 20 marks for this assignment rather than 19, which is kind of a weird place to stop. Okay. Using a dictionary to help your understanding. We've talked before about how to use a dictionary, but we didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about why you might use it. Obviously, one purpose of dictionaries is to look up the meaning of a word. But the reason why you're bothering to look up the word is to better understand a piece of text you're reading. And an unfamiliar word is throwing off your sense of the overall meaning. Sometimes we don't know a word, but it is not overly important. You can just skip over it and the writing makes sense without it. But sometimes there's a certain word that's so important that the text just doesn't make any sense unless you look up that word. So I'm going to pull an example from our story here. And I'm going to read this and then I'm looking at the word feasibility. What does the word feasibility mean? It says Sachs has determined that Toronto's proposal does not adequately protect public health and maintain public safety. This includes concerns with feasibility and ability for law enforcement to implement the proposed model. Feasible is an adjective. Feasibility would probably be a noun. Capable of being done or carried out. Capable of being used or dealt with successfully. And then reasonable or likely. If I didn't like any of the definitions or I felt like they didn't help me, I would also go to a thesaurus and look at some of the synonyms. But basically, feasible is an adjective that means something's capable of being done or carried out, probably successfully. So, with that definition, what does it mean in the sentence? There's the original, and here I kind of rewrote it, thinking about my new understanding and sort of rewrote the little sentence so I knew what it says. So Sachs feels that Toronto's proposed plan, which was they were trying to decriminalize hard drugs, she doesn't feel like it's a good idea because it doesn't protect public health and safety. And she also has concerns about the plan's feasibility or its ability to be successfully carried out. Is not a good idea. Okay. So that helps me to understand it. Like I said, there is a lot of bigger words in this particular piece. So it makes sense to sometimes look some of these up, especially if you found the piece confusing. The other way, besides kind of putting it back into the original sentence to help yourself understand a new word, is to try and create a sentence of your own that uses that word correctly. And that's why I included that as part of the questions after you read. I'm saying story, but I don't mean story necessarily, which kind of implies like it's fiction. I'm just going to say the word text, kind of the new modern word. Feasibility. So I'm going to try and use that in a sentence. Feasibility makes me think of big plans and can they be successful or not. So I immediately thought about, since this is kind of politics, my brain kind of went to more politics. So I said, the prime minister tried to create a peace plan for the two warring countries, but both of them doubted the feasibility of his ideas. In other words, they doubted his plan was going to work or be successful. They didn't like his ideas. So that's an example of putting those words into a sentence. Okay. Hopefully all of this made sense. If you find yourself confused at all, by all means, give me a phone call. I'll be happy to help you out. Tomorrow is Friday, and I'm here from 10 to 5 with a lunch break around 1:30, I believe. So if you want to call tomorrow, I'd be happy to talk to you and help you out with anything. We are getting near the end of term, about 4 weeks, 3 and a bit weeks left. So if you have any assignments to hand in to me, now is the time. So I have time to mark before graduation. Okay, guys? Thanks so much, and I will talk to you next week.